You're listening to episode 147, Child Life in Sweden. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Child Life on Call. This podcast is a safe place for parents to share their stories about what it's like to have a child that has a medical experience, diagnosis, disease, and or everything in between. We know there's power in sharing stories, and that power multiplies when you can listen to other parents who have walked a similar path to yours. Giving and getting advice is great, but hearing how another parent navigates the complexities and nuances of healthcare is even better. As a child life specialist, my role is to support, validate, and provide emotionally safe spaces for kids and their families, and I am so honored to be on this journey with you. In addition to parent stories, we sprinkle in some expert episodes every now and again that have content for both parents and professionals in the field of healthcare, all with the mission to empower parents to be confident advocates and partners with the care team during healthcare experiences. We're so glad you're here. Hello, guys. Okay, that didn't sound good. I usually start with hello, friends, but for some reason, guys came out. Anyway, let's just go with it. I hope that you noticed, or maybe you have or have not noticed, that I had an intro back today. And I have taken about a year's break from having an introduction to this podcast because I got the feedback that people are tired of intros and they just want to get to the nitty-gritty. But y'all, it kind of went against my core, and I loved our introduction and the beautiful music and everything. So anyways, I'm bringing it back with a little bit of a revamp because I want to welcome you to this space if this is the first time you're here. Hi, I'm Katie. I'm so glad you're here today. So usually on the podcast, we have parent stories, and today we are doing things a little bit differently. And the reason for that is every once in a while, I will come across an expert on a topic or another child life specialist who's doing amazing things to support families in the field. And I think that what they have to say will bring a lot of value to your life, whether you're a parent or a professional. I just find it interesting every once in a while to shake things up. Today is no different. We have Kirsten Black here, who is a certified child life specialist. She is going to be talking with us about her travels to Sweden and what she learned in the children's healthcare system there. So very, very cool stuff. She started out actually in the nonprofit sector. She had a friend whose child had CF and kind of got ingrained in a camp for CFers back in the day. And she worked at the camp for 5 years before actually moving into a nonprofit role. She loved her job there working for the CF Foundation and unfortunately was let go. And so that is when I'm going to let her story begin because that changes the trajectory into child life. And then we get into all things Swedish children's healthcare. Very cool. Okay, I'm so glad you're here and let's get started. Before we jump into the episode, I wanted to let you guys know that if you are a parent, a child life specialist, or professional working with children, you're going to want the hospital or physician's office or urgent care that you take your kids to have the Child Life On Call app. It is an evidence-based tool designed to empower children and families during medical experiences. And 100% of the child life specialists who have used this app believe that it can help with expanding child life's reach beyond the bedside. And 100% of child life specialists believe it helps parents feel more empowered in their child's care. Learn how to get the Child Life On Call app for your facility or doctor's office by going to childlifeoncall.com/partners.
So I'm Kirsten Black. I currently work at a community hospital in Melbourne, Florida. I am in the pediatric emergency department with consults to the pediatric inpatient unit and child family members of adults throughout the hospital, as well as our outpatient lab or radiology, depending on the need. It's a small hospital. Well, it's a large hospital, a small pediatric part of it. So we have 10-bed inpatient unit for kind of gen peds observation, and we have 8 beds dedicated to pediatrics in the emergency room that are a partnership with one of the major hospitals in Orlando, Florida. I also am part-time or occasionally guest lecturing for different classes throughout the country, so virtual practicums and a lot of graduate courses from different friends who have asked me to come in and talk. My experience prior to the ED, which I've been at for 3 years now, was hospice and palliative care, both pediatric patients of hospice and child family members of adult hospice patients, pediatric palliative care, and children's bereavement. That was actually my first entry into child life in the professional role. I started with an adult hospice as a volunteer coordinator to get my foot in the door, worked my way up to being able to provide phone consults to parents and family members, and then was able to get to in-home visits with preparation for end of life and memory making and funeral support for some children prior up in Atlanta, Georgia, prior to coming to Florida, Tampa for my first full-time child life job in a pediatric hospice and palliative care program. My way of getting into child life was I had a friend whose daughter was born with cystic fibrosis back in 1999. And I was in college at the time and got an invitation to come to a cystic fibrosis camp. And that's, of course, dating myself. 1999, we could still put them all together in rooms and cough. It was called Camp Whack and Hack because we did CPT in the cabins as they were doing breathing treatments, spreading all those germs. We quickly learned that wasn't okay, but I volunteered with that camp for 5 summers and decided that I wanted to work at the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. So I worked the camp for 5 years, and then there was a position open for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. I started to work there. I really thought that that's where I was going to end my career. Like my life would just be continuing to move up there and do things there. I had an undergraduate in child and family development, a master's in instructional and human performance technology, so curriculum design and getting people to do things better the way you wanted them, more efficiently. And I kind of used those things to improve fundraising for the foundation through the events that I ran and training for employees on new software we rolled out. And I loved my life there. But in 2009, the economy had tanked and fundraising was going down and nonprofits were suffering. So I was laid off, and my friends from work brought me over to one of the girls' houses. We got together that night with some red wine and some pizza and all of my favorite junk foods for comfort. And they said, okay, you've cried about it, you've complained about it, you've yelled about it, but before you go to bed, you need to plan for tomorrow, because tomorrow you're going to move forward. What are you going to do? And somewhere in there, God and red wine, I thought back to a child life specialist that I had met at camp back in those early years before being at the foundation. I said, I don't really know what it is, but there was this thing that somebody told me about camp. I think I want to do this. And they're like, what is it? And I'm like, I don't know what it is. Let's Google it. So we started looking up child life that night, red, wine, and pizza on board.
Gosh.
And I honestly, I had been to the CF. There was a freestanding standalone CF clinic where patients were admitted for tune-ups in the early 2000s. I went there and saw my kids from camp who were now teenagers, who were young adults. I kind of followed with them. And that network was so small, they were a part of our fundraising and stuff. So I had those relationships with all those kids and all those teens and young adults. I had gone to visit them when they were in the hospital multiple times and never crossed paths with child life in any of those times. So it was really just this thing seed that was planted in the back of my mind that child life was something that I wanted to do. And I'm still friends with that one child life specialist that I met back then. I reconnected with her and it's been great. So I Googled and I said, I think I have everything to do this except for an internship, but I think I need to know more about it. It's been a while since I've been in school. So I went back and got another master's in 2010. I started and I finished all my coursework and my internship and certified by 2011. And then I finished my last graduate course thesis part in 2015. Put it off for a little bit while I worked.
Gosh. You have come into the field like in such a unique way, like having nonprofit experience before getting into the field. It's very similar. I had that as well. I worked for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Same thing as you. I was like, I think I'm going to end my career here. Like, this is kind of where my passion is. But there was something missing. There was that connection with family that was missing. And somehow we've both found our way back to getting that and are finally feeling fulfilled. Of course, there are, good and bad days to child life, of course, like just like any other job. But it's interesting how we both ended up at that point. But I'm so grateful for those kind of corporate nonprofit skills that I had before coming into the field.
Absolutely. And the other thing that's unique is my first master's is so utilized every day with patients, to be able to teach, and not just like I'm showing or I'm telling, but really being able to assess the unique learning styles of each patient, each family member, each staff member, if I'm doing an education, other professionals, if, I'm trying to show them something new and they might not be, understanding what I'm saying. So really being able to understand, like, how do you break down curriculum? How do you check for understanding? That's a big part of nursing. Like when they are doing a teaching to a patient, we'll check for understanding. You need to get that feedback from them. And that is something that is so needed, which is why I'm trying so hard to break into academia. And the other part is the human performance part of my master's before child life master's. So if somebody is not doing something that you want them to do, why? And we automatically, in the corporate world, it's always, well, they don't know. Let's just put more money in education. Let's do another training, or let's do punitive stuff. But there's so many nuances. It could be that the person doesn't have the right equipment. It could be that they have stuff going on outside of work. It could be that their blood sugar is dropping because their schedule is off a little. We need to go with their circadian rhythm, or we need to schedule a snack break earlier. It's so many different things. So they taught us a systematic approach, but also looking at performance as a systemic issue. And I do that every day with kids. If I have a child who doesn't want to do something, who is afraid of something, if I have, staff members who don't want to be on board with atraumatic care, but why? And we are able to identify all of the reasons why. I mean, I've literally done brain maps with patients for med compliance. But why? What are the things? Now we're going to address all of these issues, and we're going to, unpeel the onion layer by layer, and we're going to address each one until we get to where we need to go. So,
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's very cool. And a lot of parents listen to this podcast too. So I feel like we should give them some tips maybe at the end of our conversation about, when, I could use this when my child does not want to go to school. Like, what kind of systematic approach can I break down, and I think that's really useful. But I do want to get to the hot topic of today, because I have it in the title. and that is that you are so child life through and through. And even on your vacation and your off time away from the hospital and the field, you're just immersed in it. And so you recently took a trip to another country and were able to meet, collaborate, and talk with other child life specialists in Sweden. And will you tell us a little bit about your travels there and what you found?
yeah. I actually have tried to make my travels ever since I first started traveling to Europe, which was 2014, about child life while I'm there, in some way, just because, like you said, I am kind of immersed in it. It is, it's not my identity. I have a lot of interests outside of child life, but I see that what we do is so important to the future of the world. The whole Whitney Houston, "The Children Are Our Future" song. If we can't make things better for kids, then the world that I'm going to live in when I'm older is not going to be great. So if there's any way that I can make that better, or learn about things, and I love travel because I can learn different things. It's not about me seeing things, it's about me learning things. So when I first traveled to London, I was working hospice and palliative care, back in 2014, and I knew that England has way more pediatric hospice facilities than the US. So I reached out to some, just sending an email, and was able to go and tour one, and make connections with the Melza Hospice. And then when I went back again in 2018, I visited another hospice in London. And then in 2021, when I was able to go visit some friends that I knew in Sweden, I'm a Oakland Raiders, and I'm going to still say Oakland. I refuse to acknowledge that they live in that other city now and play in that other city now. But we are an international group of fans, and I have seen my team play in London twice and met fans from all over the world and stayed in touch with them and become family with them. And so I visited Sweden in 2018 with my mother when we were going to see the Raiders play in London. and got to be really close to some Swedes. And then in 2021, I went to Sweden to visit them again and went to London to visit some of the fans I know there. And it was right after COVID. I had really wanted to get into some places in Sweden. I had been to the ones in London. I knew that I probably wasn't going to be able to get in, but I was walking around. I found the children's hospital in the town that I was in, and then popped in, knocked on the door of the Ronald McDonald house, and they let me in and they gave me a tour and they talked to me for an hour. And it was amazing to see, if you imagine the IKEA playroom and like IKEA kids rooms, that's what the Ronald McDonald House looks like in Uppsala, Sweden. It's amazing.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, that's awesome.
so it was fun, and I got to learn a little bit about the hospital in Uppsala. Um, and they are the proton therapy center for all of Northern Europe. So they get families from all over, from Iceland, from Finland, from Sweden, from Norway, from Denmark, even in from the Netherlands, and some from England. So I was able to meet a family who was getting ready to go home and kind of talk to the child for a little bit and just say hello and play for a minute. It was really fun. But because of COVID, I wasn't able to get into the hospital. So I knew that when I was going back again this year, as I was going for a wedding, and I had talked to some friends that were there in 2021 when I went. I was just kind of saying, like, what it would be like to live here. I've always kind of bounced around the idea, even in middle school and high school, of living abroad, working abroad, doing something. And I know that child life is not as strong in other countries. They're not the same title. In UK, they're health play specialists, you know. But I just had this itch. So I said to my friends, like, what would it be like to live here? And the language was scary. You know, if I could move to England, I know the language, but then I'd have to drive on the other side of the road. But if I lived in Sweden, what would it be like? And they said, well, it's easy to learn the language. Use Duolingo. So I actually started using Duolingo last year and learned enough to give a speech at the wedding, which was the goal.
Whoa, that's very cool.
But in it said, you know, I could come here. I could live here if I learned this language. And started talking to my friends and learned that I could do a PhD over there, and I could get my PhD paid for free. You actually get a stipend because you're working for the college, and there is no tuition.
Oh
So
my
that is the
gosh,
ultimate
amazing.
goal, is to move over there within a couple of years and do research. So I wanted to learn more about the field of child life over there. And I talked to Courtney Moreland, and she had some connections from the Swedish practicum from a few years ago. She sent an email on my behalf, which I wrote half in Swedish and half in English. Um, and then I went to the Association of Hospital Play Therapists, which is the Swedish version of ACLP, and emailed some people, again, half in Swedish, half in English, to say I'm coming. These are the cities I'll be in. These are the times I'll be there. I would love to visit. I would love to meet you. I would love to tour. I would love to find out more about like what it would be like if I were to move here, live here, go to school. And I didn't hear anything back for a while. And I was kind of like, oh, well, I'm still going. But,
Yeah.
and then I got a great email back from one play therapist. Said, yes, come see us. These are the dates. So we set up a time. And then from that, it turned into another visit because they connected me with another one. And the very next day, I was going to another one. And then that turned into, well, while you're in this town, we finally got you in touch with this one. And then I went to that one. So I was actually able to visit 3 children's
Wow.
hospitals in Sweden within the period of like 4 days.
We'll be right back. If you have ever wondered where you could get those cloth dolls that child life specialists use with kids for medical education or sending home to siblings or to draw on for therapeutic activities, then you don't have to wonder any longer, because our friends at Smile Makers have decided to now sell these amazing cloth dolls for a very affordable price. I know that when I was in the hospital, I would have to rely on a volunteer network to then give us the dolls, which was really nice, but I had to wait a lot of times. Like I would need a doll now and I wasn't able to get it. So this is a great place to be able to go get your procedure dolls at smilemakers.com. And y'all, they have 3 different skin tones for these cloth procedure dolls. In addition, you can actually buy a procedure doll prep bundle that comes with fabric markers. This is a fabulous way to do your medical teaching, to help siblings feel involved, to get kids creative, to do a lot of teaching about different diagnoses. And so go to smilemakers.com so you can get your cloth dolls as soon as possible before they run out. And when you go to that checkout to get your cloth dolls, also type in OnCall20 and you will get 20% off your entire order. So not just the cloth dolls. So if you get a bundle for Child Life Specialists, if you get a piece of furniture, if you get one of their really cool toys and prizes, or you order a large sticker order from them, OnCall20 gets you 20% off your whole order. That's smilemakers.com, code OnCall20 to get 20% off. What a way to get immersed really in the healthcare culture, and not only meeting, people who are doing a similar thing, but really getting exposed to their environment. That's very cool. Tell us about your experiences there and what you found, and maybe some takeaways that you like the way they really did things and you have already brought back to your practice, or that you think parents could implement here.
So what's interesting in Sweden, I think that the biggest thing is that play and the right to information is Swedish law. So the Swedish law has actually taken the ratification of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, and then additionally made it a separate law. So there's Swedish law with the right to information that we have, like parents, or in the US, we have adults have the right to information about their health care, and we have to provide it. Generally, things are on like a 5th grade level, right, for the information that people need to be able to have. But they've taken that down to the child's level. So children have the right to know, as developmentally appropriate, everything that is going on with their body in the hospital, and the procedures and the diagnosis and the outcomes, which for me is interesting. Having worked hospice and palliative care, I had ethical dilemmas of families not wanting to tell children things, hiding cancer, hiding prognoses, and not really including the child in that. And having worked with them, I knew the children knew, but nobody wanted to make the parents upset, and the parents didn't want to tell us. And it's just so heavy and so conflicting. But to see that this is something that is legally supported, that children have the right. So they actually hand out a children and young people's rights in care brochure to families, and they gave me a copy of it. So they talk about all children have the same rights and equal value. This means that you have the same right as anyone else to get help when you are ill. The best interest of the child should be considered in all decisions that concern children. You are the most important person when you receive care in our hospital. Everything we do should be in your best interest and make you feel as good as possible. All children have the right to life and development. When you're at the hospital, you have the right to develop, play, and learn like other children your age. All children have the right to express their opinion and have it respected. You always have the right to understand what the staff are saying and what is going to happen at the hospital. We want to hear what you are thinking because you are the one whom we are going to help.
Wow. How powerful.
Yes.
What kind of response do families give to that? Do you know?
They said it's just culturally accepted because children are valued differently over there. I mean, if we look at like even just from the very beginning, maternal and paternal leave is over a year, and paternal leave is guaranteed too. So they have a combination of time, and some is guaranteed to the mother and some is guaranteed to the father, and the couple then, or the parents then, decide how they want to use that.
Wow.
And it's over a year and it's paid.
Wow.
Children receive, they receive, here in the US, if you have a child, you're getting a tax credit. You're able to, okay, well, I have 3 kids. I can put these in and that calculates my deduction on my taxes that I owe, that I've already paid. But there they send a monthly stipend because your kids might need shoes now, not waiting to get it back at the end of the year or something. So there's a lot of differences. I mean, play is valued there. Outdoor time is valued. You see families all throughout the day walking around with their kids. You see intergenerational caregivers. You see, Montessori style schools everywhere. So because that's so culturally ingrained that that family time and giving the children that attention and giving that time, outdoor playtime is mandated, that it's just, wow, we don't know any different.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can imagine it was difficult to come back after kind of seeing that, right?
Yes.
And so there's, not saying that the way we do things are all bad here, because I think we do a pretty good job prioritizing kids and families, absolutely, in the hospital. But when you see such just a different cultural response to kids in healthcare, it's probably a little overwhelming when you come back.
It was. I brought this back, and I brought a stack full of handouts from them to share with my team and with our medical director. And, we're working on some takeaways from that, some ways we can implement things. What's unique about their profession over there, the health play specialists, is they are not academically trained for the role of child life, the field of child life, the field of hospital. They all have a degree in pedagogy and or special education, and they are teachers by trade. And they came into this field because they saw an opening and they were interested in doing more, or inspired by a student that they had in a class or something. And they get in and they learn on the job and through their small network of about 80 professionals in the country. And when they get in, they stay in. So one of the women that I met has been doing this for 42 years.
Wow.
42. They said
Yeah.
they don't leave, they don't turn over. Like, the positions are hard to find because people
What,
love it.
so what do you think that difference is,
I
that
think it's
longevity in the field? Probably a combination of things. I would imagine if, if the females in our field who become parents had a year off, that would make things differently. If they received a stipend from the government monthly to help with income, those kinds of things. But
there's definitely the financial security is different. It is a country that there's a lot more, universal health care and different things. So, there's a lot more things that are socialized, but in reality, the cost of living ends up being about the same, and the
yeah,
salaries end up being about the same. I talked with one woman, and I said, I'm not going to ask you what you make, but I'm just kind of curious, like, compared to others. And they're in the same boat as us. They
right.
said, we're a female dominated organization and profession. We are teachers by trade, so teachers don't make a lot of money. But if you look just generally speaking, Nordic countries tend to be happier. They have half the year spent in darkness and winter, but they're still the top 5 happiest countries,
Yeah.
because there's just a work-life balance. There is a focus on family. There is a focus on things outside of work. There's all of that with the burnout. And I also think, too, a big part of child life struggle in the US constantly is trying to advocate not just for our patients, but for ourselves as professionals who have evidence-based practice. It's just accepted there that these things are going to happen. And it's interesting being in the ED. It is my role mostly to go in to make a poke plan with a kid and a family, to prepare them, to show them the catheter, to show them the tourniquet, to do medical play, to bring in my mini CT scanner. The play therapists over there are playroom based, and they do consults for major needle fears or pre-op consults. But the majority of the prep and the poke plan and the distraction is nurse led. And they actually had one of the handouts they gave me. It was that the nurse is kind of just their standard. It says, are you going to poke? The very first thing is, do you have EMLA? Have you
Yeah.
gathered all your materials? Have you shown and explained the procedure to the child and the parent? Have you found out if there's any negative experiences prior for either the parent or the child? And have you thought about who's going to assist and hold? Does there need to be a plan for distraction? Who's going to do what and how's it going to go? This is all before you even go into a room, like for the
Wow.
procedure. And this is nurses. This is a thing
Yeah.
that they give the nurses when they educate the nurses. And then it goes into, what kind of distraction and, are they going to sit up? Are they going to need something? And then afterwards, are you going to reward? And if it wasn't well coped, well tolerated, and it wasn't good coping, then it specifically says, have you talked to the play therapist? Are you
Yeah.
going to go back for a plan? And, they teach this to the nurses. And I know from experience in my hospital and other specialists that I talk to in the US that we have to educate who we are to staff after they've been onboarded, after they've been there a while.
Right.
Travelers in this field of healthcare now, and so I think that leads to a huge burnout, to not being respected as professionals, especially with so many of us having master's degrees now and having been in the field and using evidence-based practice all the time. To have somebody tell me, no, lidocaine doesn't burn, or no, Versed doesn't burn that much in the nose. Well, let's poke you. Let's put it in your nose. And you tell me that, because
Right.
I tell you from visuals, but I can also show you research articles that shows that lidocaine is 1,000 times more acidic than flesh, which is why we should buffer it when it's injected. Please and thank you.
Right. Right.
So they don't argue with that as much, because it says children need to be given the best care, and everything is in the benefit of the child.
How powerful.
Hmm.
I imagine too, like just going a little bit back to the burnout thing, that I wonder if there's just less burnout in general from a lot of professions in a culture like Sweden has. Because you do have that work life balance, you do have social governmental support in different ways that we do.
I think so. I mean, I have several friends over there now, and none of the ones I know are burnt out the way I see. There's not a hustle and bustle in a field not related to healthcare. I have a friend over there that he's in hospitality,
Yeah.
and he manages hospitality workers, and he's been in like recreation and amusement park, and now he's in a hotel and a restaurant. And he said, if I need to call somebody to ask them something on their day off, I had better be prepared to bring them into the office and pay them for 2 to 3 hours,
Right.
even if they're not in the office for 2 to 3 hours, because I'm calling them on their day off while they are with their family, and I'm interrupting that time, and I'm asking them to change what their mindset is to put it into work mode. And then they're going to solve the problem with us. And then they have to have time to decompress again and go back. And that's 2 hours, 3 hours. So if I'm not willing to pay you for that time I've interrupted from you, I'm not taking it from you. Wow.
Yeah. It's just so right. It's not like totally surprising that that's how it should be, but I love that example and that time that he takes.
Yeah.
I wish we could continue to talk because I have so many more questions for you, but I want to know, is there anything else about your time in Sweden that really stuck with you and that you've brought back over here? And yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
anything else you'd like to add about what you've learned?
So one thing was interesting is all three hospitals had sensory rooms next to their playrooms with different things, but that was very much a part of what they provide in their playrooms. I have some wonderful pictures that maybe we can find a way to share with people of different things that I saw when I was at a friend's house for the night. I was with his 3-year-old daughter, and they are very much a loose parts and a free play and a creative play. You think Montessori style stuff, you think the IKEA toys, and that's real. That's what they do with their children there. It's not a high tech. They don't have a lot of things that make sounds and noise. They want the kids to make the sounds, which I thought was amazing. And that's the same was in all the playrooms at the hospital. One of the hospitals that I was at had in their art and craft area of the playroom, they had projects that their long-term patients, so this is the one that had the proton therapy, they were building things like castles, and this one little girl had like the disco cat house that she and her mom had been working on. And every time she came, she would add a little more to that project. So they have these long-term family projects that these long-term chronic patients were doing, which I thought was incredible.
Oh gosh, I really like that idea. That just like the consistent something to look forward to when you're there. It's like something else you're building in a place that's not just about pain and treatment. It's about this family project. That's very cool.
Yeah, there were a couple of those that were just really amazing. In the largest hospital in Sweden, they toured I got to tour their library. Their library has books in 42 different languages. 42 different languages.
Yes.
Including like the Sami, which is like the native Sweden, the native land.
Yeah.
And so kind of equivalent to what an Eskimo tribe kind of thing, the ones that are living up in the northern area. And Braille. So they have an organization of volunteers that takes children's books that are popular and hand makes Braille versions. So there's the Braille, and then they make a sensory version of the photo or the illustration in the book. So there was a book about a little bear, and there was a fuzzy brown bear. The child could feel the bear. So it brings the pictures to life for children with their visual impairments.
Just like another level of accessibility and,
yes,
making anyone who walks in feel comfortable. And I think that's such a good message.
They're the dolls that hospital uses for demonstrations of catheters and enemas and any sort of, VCUGs and anything that they were doing are actually the dolls that you buy for forensic examinations. So they were dolls that had openings. It's
Right.
like, oh, brilliant idea.
What do you know? What do you know? And here we have those. They're really expensive. They're really hard to get. Yeah. You have to, go through the different chain of commands to get those for your hospital, unless you're willing to pay out of pocket.
Yeah, and they just had them. Speaking of dolls, so my friend's 3-year-old little girl, we were playing all sorts of games when I was at their house, and her doll had no clothes on because, kids don't keep their clothes on their dolls. And her little doll is anatomically correct. I said, this is going to sound really crazy, but I need to take a picture of your daughter's doll because your daughter's doll has a labia.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, because your children play with dolls that look funny and are flat and are missing things.
Oh my gosh.
And how would children know what is normal? And how would children know about things if we kept it secret? And I was like, oh, yes, because, we use cutesy little names instead of vagina and penis.
Yeah.
And here's another level of they don't have nearly the same problems that we do because they're just transparent and open and developmentally appropriate and honest. And it's not anything to be afraid of. It's real and it's life.
It's kind of all these things that child life specialists advocate for, and just another reason why they're so essential in any kind of healthcare experience. Well, I'm so grateful, Kirsten, that you came on and talked to us about your experience. And I am so looking forward to hearing more about your travels in the future to get a PhD. And what you'll do is just amazing. Whether you stay here, you go somewhere else, or you travel back to Sweden, we're always going to welcome your insight and what you learned, because some of us aren't able to do that. So the fact that you can and bring it back is really amazing. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Anytime.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Child Life On Call podcast. The only reason this podcast keeps on going is because of you and listeners like you. So please join in on the conversation with us on Instagram, Facebook. I'm even on TikTok now, y'all, making a fool of myself. I haven't danced yet, but maybe it's coming. You can find us at Child Life On Call. We also have a website, and that has all of our information about the Child Life Circle, about the Child Life On Call app, and a blog with new information all the time. That's childlifeoncall.com. Thank you again from the bottom of my heart for listening to these episodes and being a part of this community. We are so grateful and so honored to be able to provide this for you.